let's start out. Hey, let's start out learning something. Like, we're always down to learn some things here. Let's talk with our friend Patrick in Florida, he, him pronouns, and you're calling to tell us about the distinction between panpsychism and panprotopsychism. Is that right?
That's what I've been thinking about this. My faith is kind of adaptive, obviously,
Sure.
because I feel like I was originally more of a panpsychist, pantheist originally, but
Mm.
I think it's a little different when you're saying you're a pantheist versus a panpsychist versus a panprotopsychist, and
Yeah.
where like a panpsychist would believe that consciousness was fundamental, I guess, in all things, but like a panprotopsychist would feel that proto consciousness is fundamental to all things.
Okay.
So it's not
So,
quite the same, but I'm not sure if even I understand it exactly, but I think I'm more like a pan-protopsychist, if you
yeah.
all know about this at all.
So, I mean, just from the, and I appreciate, Patrick, you kind of giving us just a little bit of a distinction between the two, because I was going to ask for all the viewers and myself. This isn't something that I've played around with a whole bunch, but one of the first things that does come to my mind, I guess, is what is your understanding of the difference between like consciousness and proto consciousness? How do those actually relate to each other? Are they two separate things? Are they just different rungs on the same ladder? Like, because I think that would be something huge that we would have to figure out. Like, what the heck is proto consciousness in your understanding? And then, once we have an understanding of what that is, then we can like look at everything else in the world and say, ah, yes, this pin has it, this rock has it, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think, like, for me personally, like, panpsychism or pan-protopsychism wouldn't be saying, like, a rock is conscious or something like that. It just, I think everything would have like the potential for consciousness that's a living thing, like
So you
like
don't
for
make a
example,
distinction
like
between, hang on real quick. So it sounds like you're saying that like it's not that everything in the universe has consciousness or is part of that gigantic interconnected web of consciousness, but just living things are?
I mean, I think you have a potential for consciousness there, but I would think that like this is my take on it. Like I like what Tesla said on this. He said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists." That's a faith. So he had a faith there. And I think that's kind of along the lines of, this kind of pantheism or panpsychism or pan-protopsychism. I
Hmm.
think that would be more along the lines of pan-protopsychism, what he spoke of there. My brain
Yeah.
is only. And then you look into it further, like OR theory by Roger Penrose is a good theory on consciousness, I believe,
Hmm.
personally. I've just read, I just know from a layman's standpoint, I don't
Sure.
know the
Yeah.
math involved and all that, of course.
I don't
Well,
know if any of that
But
really
you can
rises
read
to the level of
articles.
theory. It sounds more like hypothesis to me.
yeah, yeah. Like we've
Well, that's
observed some
all
things and hang on just a second. Hang on just a second, Patrick. Like we've observed some things and some of it's a little fuzzy still and we're not totally sure, and we're kind of making these predictions about what we're going to see next if we do X, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of where it sounds
No,
like it
they're
is to
actually
me.
not
And
saying
well,
that.
hang on,
They're
hang
not
on, hang
saying.
on just a second, Patrick. Hang on just a second. I promise I will let you talk. But the issue still for me, I think, is kind of where I was getting at from the beginning, is that there does seem to be a problem when we try to put, a nice, neat little circle around consciousness, and proto consciousness as well. Both of these things still seem to have so much fuzz to them in the sense of our understanding that it's hard for me to say that we can just extrapolate that to all living things in such a degree.
Right.
I think I think from what I understand, again, at least, and believe me, I'm no expert in this, but there does seem to be this
You're
kind of like,
faking it real good.
oh, thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah. I'll get yelled at by all my friends afterwards. But like there's this kind of like ladder thing where it's like at the very beginning rung of the ladder, um, it's clear that this thing has more of an understanding of its surroundings, than say the rock or the sand on the beach. But it doesn't rise to the same level that we see in dogs or dolphins or
No.
horses or people, right? But I don't know that that's anything. I mean, it is fantastic, but it also sounds to me kind of just like what life does. Like,
Right.
especially if we think about it, I heard somebody was talking about how kind of the beginnings of consciousness could just be the basic nervous system and emotions that we get from sensing the world around us, right? And that seems pretty sensible to me. But I don't know that that rises to the level of anything more fantastic, right? Like I guess, okay, sure, centipedes have some level of consciousness, but I would expect that for life. And so I don't know that we're really gaining anything by saying that we accept this, panpsychism or panprotopsychism. And hopefully I didn't ramble too much there, Patrick. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I appreciate your input, and I think you guys look at things pretty objectively. I think I just
Try.
I like
We
the
try.
back against organized religion, that kind of thing. But I just wanted to say real quick there about OR theory. Of course, it's theoretical. I'm not saying it's a fact, but it's legitimate science and Roger Penrose is well respected in the scientific community. But what it deduces, I don't know that Roger Penrose would agree with me on what it actually deduces, but it says that like the single cell paramecium, for example, they're saying it exhibits consciousness without a brain or nervous system at all. So that seems like that would squash the emergent consciousness hypothesis right there, because how can you justify that if a single cell with no brain or nervous
Well, if
system is
Well,
conscious?
yeah, hang on a
this is
second,
kind of what
Patrick.
this is what you were saying, SR, is that,
Yeah.
response to stimuli doesn't necessarily mean that that thing is conscious. Like I would expect a bacteria to, move to a warmer place or, a brighter place if they need that for some sort of energy, right? That doesn't necessarily
They
mean that
seek
it's
out
making the
food,
choice.
Right.
they seek out food, they mate, they reproduce.
Right.
I think they could even swim through mazes and stuff. I'm not positive about that. You may want to check me on that one, but
Even
they
still, though,
definitely show
Eh,
signs of consciousness, I would say.
well,
That's
hang on.
what
So,
they're
Patrick,
deducing in
Patrick,
their
hang
theory.
on, Patrick. How this? Because I think this is important. Is exactly what Nate said there really succinctly is that just because we see something responding to outside stimuli, that doesn't mean that it is conscious, right? And that's
It's
kind of where the hard
reacting.
distinction comes in. So hang on. So the question would be, how can we determine between just simply responding to outside stimuli and a self-aware thing that like goes through the process of saying like, oh my gosh, it's hot here, let me move so that I'm not as hot, right? So I think when we're on that second end of that spectrum, it's like, okay, that seems to be where we feel comfortable saying something is conscious, right? A human being eats something and goes, oh my gosh, that's spicy, and then they drink some water, right? But how would we really tell the difference between that level of thinking about the thing that we're doing and the stimulus that we're receiving and just something responding to stimuli, right? Like I drop a ball on a little, little seesaw thing, and then the thing on the other side flies off. Well, it responds to the stimuli, but does that mean that that little rock on the other side is conscious?
It'd be like an action reaction kind of response, but I'm
Sure.
talking about something that's actually proactively, seeking out food and mate and
So how
mating,
do you know that it's
reproducing.
proactively doing that as opposed to just responding to the environment around it,
It's like
right?
you think it's just like if it's an autonomous, that would be the other argument. I guess it's an autonomous kind of thing, and it's just like a reaction automatically. Well,
Sure.
then it seemed like somebody would have to be controlling it at that point. Then who would be controlling the organism?
Maybe.
That's unusual to
I
me.
think the
It could
organism
just
would be, yeah.
yeah, it could just be like,
It's
a lock and a
it's
key.
selfish,
Hang on, Patrick. Hang on, Patrick.
automatic reaction.
Hang on, 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 hang on. It could
Beep,
be
beep.
yeah, it could just be like a physical thing, right? So, like, with a key, the reason that a key turns a lock is because there's an actual physical structure that has to be met, right? The tumblers all show up in different places, and sometimes they're a little lower, sometimes they're a little higher. And it's just that the actual physical shape of the key inserting into the lock clicks all those buttons and then it turns because of it. Like, what if it's just a thing? Like, for instance, um, high pressure air systems will just naturally move to lower pressure air systems because that's just what happens with physics. Like, there's a lot of atoms moving around at a high pace, and then they just fill the space that doesn't have as many atoms and isn't moving as fast. What if it's shit like that? You know, like,
What
like
I'd like to ask Patrick, so even if we do grant you that a paramecium is conscious,
mm,
right? And just for the sake of argument, how do you then make the leap to all consciousnesses being somehow interconnected in the universe? Like
that's a good question.
that doesn't really matter to me,
Hmm.
Like I'm not connected
To
to
me, it's
secular rarity
back.
via telepathy,
Right.
or am I?
Oh, what number am I thinking?
Well, to me, it would come back to that Orko theory because I was getting to that, but it's not real simple either. The science it's hard to understand even just reading a layman's paper on it, but
Sure.
at the same time, it deduces what it said in one article I read. Well, actually, it was the actual body of the theory itself, and they've gained empirical evidence. They've measured quantum displacements in the microtubules of the cell walls of the paramecium and the cell walls of our human brains, and the displacements. They're showing that our consciousness seems to interact with the space-time geometry of the universe itself.
Oh,
Now,
hang
what
on.
in the hell
Wow,
Hang on.
man.
Hold up
Can I
there.
get
Hold
some
up there.
ranch dressing for that
Yeah, yeah,
salad,
yeah, yeah.
please?
Hold up, Patrick. Hold up. So,
What-
so are
this is
you
real
are you
science?
saying, hang on, Patrick, we're having a conversation. We go back and forth, we wait a little bit, we go
Yeah,
back
we,
and
we need
forth.
to we need
Uh,
to
but
clarify that a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit.
When you're saying our consciousness interacts with like space-time, what are you meaning by that? Like, is this like the whole quantum mechanics observer experiment thing, or is that kind of where you're going? Like, are you saying we manifest our reality through thoughts type stuff?
Give us an example,
I
please.
Yeah,
don't know about that. I'm not saying that. I'm not
yeah.
saying that. I think there's something deeper going on that you may say, well, he's just saying another God of the gaps argument. But that could also be, if you're saying it like that, like everything that's unknown is just God of the gaps, to me, that's like saying the same thing as everything is atheism of the gaps. If there's a gap there,
Oh, no,
that's
no, no, no,
where
no. Yeah,
science
yeah,
is
yeah.
going to
Patrick,
fill the
hang on. I've
gap.
got this. I've got this. I see the confusion that you're having because it's actually the same confusion that I had for a really long time. And so the difference is that the God of the gaps is actually attempting to explain the gap, right? So the whole point of that fallacy, that when we point that out and we say to, hang on, Patrick, I'm not done. I was literally in the middle of a sentence. No break, no breath, no nothing.
My bad. Sorry.
That's okay. It happens. It happens. But so what people are saying when somebody says, "Hey, this is a God of the gaps issue here. This is a problem with your logical reasoning here." What they're claiming is that somebody says, "We don't know something, but here's the answer of the thing that we don't know." And almost always it's God. On the reverse side of it, it's not that atheists, well, I'm sure there's some atheists that says this, but I have never really heard anybody make the claim, "Hey, we don't know this thing about consciousness, therefore it's definitely not a God, can't be, no way whatsoever." Because then I guess, yeah, that would be atheism of the gaps, but that's not really what atheism is. It's just simply someone says, "Hey, do you believe in a God?" And then somebody's like, "Oh no, I don't. I don't accept that claim because I don't have any sufficient evidence," right? There are other people that take it further on things, but that's just the base level of it. So it's not that it's atheism of the gaps or science of the gaps or anything like that. It's just the most reasonable conclusion to say, if we don't know this thing right now, we're probably going to find it out through the scientific method as opposed to anything else, because that's the thing that's been the most reliable. And then those of us that are atheists would also say, like, hey, it's probably not going to be God because it's never been God.
Yeah, it hasn't been God yet.
Right.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten that conclusion
He's
yet.
batting zero so
So
far.
right. It's I mean, he could hit the home run, he could Babe Ruth point it out and whatever, but it's unlikely, is kind of how we come to it. But I guess for me, what I always wonder about, like, panpsychism and I guess panprotopsychism now too, is just what does this do for you? Like, what is the value of thinking that all of the things that are conscious are connected in some web? Does it do you make decisions differently about, like, animals or people, or, like, because if
No, I
really
don't
at the end of the
think
day you're just saying,
that's
I
up
think
to the
everything
humans.
is, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Humans need to sort it out for themselves. We need to solve our own morality issues and all of that. I don't think it doesn't say anything to any of that. I don't think panpsychism or panprotopsychism. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't have anything to say about it because, I would say read On Liberty by John Stuart Mill, and essentially that in a nutshell is, don't do whatever you will, just don't infringe on anyone else's liberties and freedoms in the process of what you're doing. And you probably
I'm pretty sure that's in the
rape,
Satanic
murder,
Bible as well.
I was gonna say it sounded very
That's-
satanic temple to me, which
Yeah.
they have some great tenets for sure.
Yeah, way better than the Ten
They
Commandments. That's
stole
Yeah.
that. They
Well,
stole that. That was out long before that was written.
I don't know. I don't know that stealing is the
Inspired
right way.
by,
Yeah,
Patrick.
more of kind
Inspired,
of
yeah.
co-opted, or
Yeah.
did the same thing that we do with all stuff where we grab little bits. That was why I wanted Nate to talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh earlier, is because there are a lot of bits from that really ancient story that are used in a bunch of holy texts, right? And I think we see a similarity through a lot of things, in our reality, in our world around us, right? We see a brick house, and then we see, a beaver dam, and we go, gosh, there are some things that are so similar about those. But there is that question of whether or not this thing was created by a conscious agent, which is kind of, getting us back to the whole whether or not consciousness is this, super broad thing that exists in reality. I think at the end of the day, um, of the beliefs out there in the world that are motivating people and are, in my opinion, maybe not super well founded. This is one that doesn't seem to me like it's particularly problematic in a lot of different ways. I very rarely have heard a panpsychist talking about imposing their will on other people and getting everybody to be, or criminalizing people, or passing laws in a government where you're not supposed to be doing stuff like that. I haven't really heard that from the panpsychists. I guess for me, it's kind of just like one side of it is a claim that we really don't have any good evidence for. And the other side of it, like everything is connected in this interweb of consciousness. And then the other side of it is something that doesn't seem particularly impressive to me. And I guess that's just me being kind of cynical. But like, yeah, the thought of like all living creatures having some ability to control like their, reactions to things, that kind of seems, understandable. I don't know that crickets are sitting around talking with each other and being like, man, can you believe that grass yesterday was so tasty? But at the same time, it
But
makes
I'm
sense to
not
me that if
talking
you,
about sentience now. I'm talking about consciousness. Sentience is like what you're talking about, I think, is like
sentience is the ability to feel
sentient
stuff around you,
Like,
right?
I'm not saying a single-celled paramecium would be sentient. I
Are
think
you
that's
saying,
wrong.
when you're saying sentience, are you using it in the sense of being able to feel things around you, having senses?
Like, I mean, like, really self-aware, like a
Yeah,
being,
that's
like
consciousness.
a sentient being is something that's like self-aware. And like, I don't know that maybe a paramecium would be, but you can't ask it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So, like, that is one of the big problems. But again, sentience is just the ability to like feel stuff around you. It's not anything more than that. And it seems that we both accept that that's kind of like the base level of being able to have that perception, like the ability to have that like second order thinking and stuff. Again, I think at the end of the day that where we get to with this idea of consciousness being a more broad thing throughout the world around us is either something that is particularly mundane and not interesting. Again, I feel confident that crickets are thinking in some way that seems reasonable to me that all living things are doing this. But at the same time, like, it's on the other side, it's not particularly interesting to me. But
You know what? Can I say something real quick about it? Like you
please.
said, why would I feel this way or believe this way? I think first off, it could be a plausible reality we exist, and it could just be the reality. We can't say for certain. But
Sure.
beyond that is like, you know how like when you hear a song and you feel the hair stand up on your arm and you're just rocking out or whatever kind of music you like, classical, whatever. When you feel that, I think there's something going on there besides just, it is all natural. It is all physical. But to me, like, for example, I was radio repair and electronics in the Army and stuff. And in class, we're talking about FM frequency modulation, and he called it fucking magic. And I think it is. It's natural, of course, but it's still fucking magic. We can explain it. We can explain different aspects of it, but we can't fully explain how it works.
Sure.
We
But
can explain how it works. We can't explain the meaning behind it.
So stick with me right there for just a second, Patrick. If we can't explain how it works, whatever the fantastical,
I'm
super
not
duper cool
saying
thing
that's
is,
God. I'm not saying that's God of the gap.
good. That's what I want to make sure you and I are on the same page on, is that
I'm just
if
saying
we're
it
hang on
could.
just a second, if we are saying we don't know the answer, we can pose ideas. We can say it could be this thing, it could be this thing, but we actually have to go about investigating that in a manner that does help us cut down some of those options. And I think when we say that we are living in a world where this consciousness is connected in the way that panpsychists often like to connect it, I say that just takes us that extra step further of making that positive claim when we're still at the place where we don't know. Does that make sense? Do you feel like you're with me there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying I don't know, but
Yeah.
I like this idea. Let's continue to investigate it with science.
Well,
And
I'm with you there.
faith is, if science proves some aspect of my faith wrong, then my faith would have to change, right?
Well, that's good. I would say that you're not using faith there. You're using evidence. My gosh, my mouth decided to stop working. But yeah, you're not using faith there. You're using evidence, which I think is the exact right way for us to go about these types of claims, and these types of questions that we have. Right. I think it would be awesome if it were possible for like telepathy and stuff. Man, that'd be super cool. I'd love to talk to like rats. I mean, they're supposedly like really, really friendly. A friend of mine has a pet rat, and so apparently they cuddle a lot. But I'd love to talk to like small rodents or just any other animal. It'd be really cool. I'm sure dolphins have a good sense of humor. Actually, I don't know. I'm just guessing that. Anyway, Patrick, let me wrap up with you, man, because I think we ended on a really good note where both of us are saying, look, on these things that are out there that are still a little funky and we still don't have a good answer to. We should keep investigating them, but we shouldn't get to that point of making the claim until we have good evidence. So I think you and I are on the same page with that, Patrick.
Oh, yes, certainly. Really, I appreciated I feel like this has been a good exchange here.
Yeah.
But I would like to say that some of these ideas I think are very plausible. They've got legitimate science behind some of the ideas. And I think we shouldn't at the same time just dismiss ideas like, oh, the universe conscious, that's just absurd. Why? Because we say it's absurd. It's just so absurd. It's just, I think you said at one point where you said the atheists would say, I just don't see any evidence for that. But I would have gone more with the agnostic stance most of my life that would say, I don't know if we have any evidence. I don't know what evidence would be of God. That would be my stance as an agnostic.
But real quick, Patrick, if you're saying that you don't know, aren't you also saying that you aren't taking the positive claim? Right? Aren't you also saying that you aren't like simultaneously when you say, I don't know, I don't have the answer to this particular question. And then somebody says, okay, but do you so somebody says, is God real? And you say, oh, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. Yes. I don't know. No. And then they ask the next question, which is, do you believe in a God? If you don't know that a God is real, if you don't have knowledge of that, then you would be an atheist because you don't make the claim that you believe in a God, right? Doesn't that make sense?
No, I would say I don't know if I believe or disbelieve. I'm not sure if
They're two different questions. They're two different questions that you're asking. Patrick, hang on. Patrick, hang on. There are two different questions that you're asking and you're mixing them up needlessly. If the question is, do you think a God exists? Do you believe in a God, right? You can't say you don't know, right? Because then you're saying that you don't know your own thoughts. You're saying that if you believe or don't believe in a God, you don't have access to that somehow. And that really doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So it's different questions that are being asked and answers. So do you believe in unicorns? Like, do you think unicorns, this magical horse that poops out rainbows and has this horn on its head, do you think those things walk around the earth, right?
Not the Earth, but maybe on some other planet out in
Okay,
space.
so hang on. So you don't believe in unicorns. You would be an a-unicornist, right? Now, here's the next question, which is, do unicorns exist, right? You don't hold the positive belief that they do. But the next question is, but do they actually exist in the real world? And we can be agnostic on that and say, hey, we don't actually know on that one, right? But we currently do not hold the belief that unicorns are real. And that's the distinction between atheist and agnostic. I think that's one of the best ways to kind of break it down. It's that it's two different questions that are being answered. And you can answer either of those questions however the heck you want.
Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I just feel like the agnostic undecided agnostic, not agnostic atheist or agnostic theist, just the agnostic, the 100% undecided agnostic. That's really the most logical choice. But I like to have an opinion, so I like this panprotopsychism, and it hasn't been falsified yet. So I leave it to science to falsify the claim. If they can't do it, perhaps it'll be evidence.
I would rethink about asking others to prove you wrong. My suggestion is always, when you accept a claim, the reason you should accept that is because that claim has a positive indication that exclusively corresponds to that claim, right? So change the way that you're thinking about the burden of proof, in my opinion, because where you're at right now seems to me that you're setting yourself up to believe stuff that you don't have good reason to believe, right? If you're just waiting for somebody, if you're just, hang on, Patrick, Patrick, I am in the middle of talking. I have done this 3 times with you. I know you hear me. I know you do. But we're going to end it in just a moment. But what I'm going to say is, my suggestion is, when you are accepting claims, don't be in the boat of saying this is true until other people can show me that it's not. You should only accept a claim when there is sufficient evidence to accept that claim. Okay. I'm going to bring you back on for just a second. And we've been talking a whole bunch, so I'm going to let you go, but I'll let you say just a couple more words before we kick you out.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you. I'm sorry, I get a little hard to deal with, and I appreciate your patience. And y'all have a good one, and thank you for having me on.